I'm about to help you solve one of the biggest paradoxes on the spiritual path, which is the fact that we have all been told to let go, to stop wanting to remove our suffering, to stop resisting, to stop doing. We've been told to stop doing all of these things. And this is like kind of a legitimate thing to say because technically that is the idea, that the idea is right, by if we did stop resisting, suffering would disappear, literally it would vanish, that suffering is resistance. So therefore, if we stop doing certain things, if we stop resisting, then therefore we will stop suffering. But the one common problem, which is a kind of a nuanced problem, is that some people then try to stop, they try to then stop resisting. So they add another layer of resistance to their experience where they're still, the energy doesn't just drop, they're still like subtly holding on to something. And what we need to do in order to solve this, it's very, very specific. It's a whole shift in our perspective that we need to take. Prior to true awakening, we have this idea that we need to heal. We have this idea that we need to fix our emotions, fix ourselves, change ourselves, and get ourselves into the right position. Obviously, we find out eventually this is a load of nonsense. It's not possible. So then we start trying to be what we are. We start trying to be awareness, be ourselves, be this pure peace of consciousness. And we try to rest in being, abide in being. And then what we find is that we don't get the full enchilada, and we still have this subtle desire to remove our suffering. We start doing these things in order to remove our suffering. And this is always the key, this desire to remove our suffering. Then we hear someone like me maybe say, well, your resistance is causing the suffering, so don't resist your suffering, right? You see, this is never something I've actually said, and I would never recommend saying that, but that's typically what happens. So we get told that. So then we start saying, well, I need to stop resisting, but we try to then stop resisting in order to remove our suffering. It just doesn't work. Do you see the cycle? We need to come to terms with this realization that we cannot do anything to remove our suffering. The only thing we can do is convert our desire and interest into understanding the truth. And we all are capable of understanding that. This is the key thing. We have to see this as like an art project or something that we're interested and passionate about. You see, we have to see it as like, this is like an actual science investigation, a science project. We're just interested, we're curious, we're like astronomers, we're exploring the stars. In this instance, we're exploring the stars of our own inner world. Instead of exploring the skies, we're exploring ourselves. Unless we come to this realization, everything we do is going to be trying to remove our suffering. And for as long as we're trying to remove our suffering, we will be suffering. You see what I mean? Like, so there has to be some shift that we make that is completely different to the same intention that we had before. So now we have to shift our attention. It's very simple. Shift your attention to, instead of trying to remove your suffering, instead of doing things in order to remove your suffering, do it for the pure curiosity and interest and passion that you have to understand the truth. This is not something you have to make up. Every single human being has this desire innate within them. It's programmed into their DNA. Every child is curious. Every child wants to understand the truth. Use that same desire. We have to convert this desire, convert this interest. The reason being, when we convert our desire from wanting to remove our suffering to desiring to see the truth of it, we purify the desire. The energy that we have is purified. Because then it's not trying to change anything. Because for as long as we're trying to change anything, we can't even listen to my meditations. The meditations that I host, the meditations that other teachers would host, it just goes in one ear and out the other, because we're still doing something to remove our suffering. And for as long as we're doing something to remove our suffering, we are always going to be looking for some state of mind, some object that we can receive or experience. So sometimes I've come to meditations with people, and at the end they're going, yeah, but I just don't understand what I'm supposed to get. Well, you're not supposed to get anything, because that's not the point, you see? That tells me that they're still trying to find some state of mind, some realization that's going to change their experience. Your experience doesn't need to be changed. This entire spiritual path is there to do one thing, to get you absolutely 100% comfortable with the direct experience that you're having right now, not any other experience, to be fully whole and complete with just whatever's taking place. So don't expect anything to change, because if it did change, then how would you ever know that you were actually experiencing this pure, true nature of acceptance? Because, well, it was just handicapped or gaslighted by the fact that you just had a better experience. Do you really want to have that limitation, to have a better experience in order to then accept your experience? It doesn't make any sense. That's not freedom. Yeah, I'd rather have freedom where instead of being completely free, I'd rather be limitedly free and have a certain state of mind make me happy. It doesn't make any logical sense. There was no freedom in that. It's like saying, well, I'd rather have this because this is another condition on unconditional happiness. It's impossible. So we have to start realizing, well, what's the one thing I have never done? Sat with and explored the actual experience that I'm having instead of trying to find a new one. And all of a sudden we're open to this. Oh my gosh, I've never thought of that before. I'm open to this truth now. I'm open to understanding. I'm open to receptive. This is what makes the mind ripe for understanding. Prior to that, the mind isn't really ripe for understanding because it will constantly bypass any truth with, but does it change my state of mind? But does it remove my suffering? But does it do this? Does it do that? Does it give me some form of emotional benefit? And this seeking of some form of experience to change is the very thing keeping you stuck in the same position. This is why there's people who've been seeking for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because this is the only thing they've ever done is look for some kind of change or state of mind. Someone commented on Alan Watts' quote in one of my recent videos, something like, no one will accept their enlightenment unless they believe they have paid the price of what it costs to attain it. And what he's really saying by that is that to recognize our true nature and to fully accept and truly just own that within ourselves, own our own freedom, we need the right context. And until we've had the right context, we're not going to accept it, because then we'll go, so guess what we're going to do? Put it on a pedestal. We'll put it on a pedestal. We'll make it out like it's the grandest experience ever, but it's not. You see, it's a normal experience. It's just you currently as you are, but not know it, but actually knowing what you are. Instead of believing you're a finite, limited entity, you would still experience a material world. You'll still experience, when I say material, we would know it's not material, but we'll still experience a dual world, but the duality will shine with reality. You see, duality shines with non-duality in the sense that I can see that I have two eyes. I don't just have one eye. I know that the I I'm referring to is the body, mind, and not my real I, but I can still say I am sitting on a chair and not believe, oh my God, I, the individual body, mind, is sitting on a chair all on my own in this universe. You see, that's obviously not true. I know my true nature. Reality, the world does not veil or cause ignorance in me, you see. That's the goal, to just have not ignorance cause. It's not to add something to. The thing that's added is the ignorance. The ignorance is an add-on. So if we remove the add-on, nothing changes per se, yet everything changes. You see? Suffering disappears. So this is the goal, is to understand that this is a science project. This is a passion project. This is not a way of removing suffering. It's a way of understanding. Because of our love of truth, of our love of freedom, of our appreciation for life. That is the place to come from. And you don't have to do anything to get there. You already have that innate within you. So try to convert your desire, convert your interest, change the intention, which you can do willingly. You see? You have to understand that. And when you understand that, that's when you're ripe for understanding. You are ripe to understand the truth. You are ripe to explore experience, because then you're not going to be looking at your experience, subtly trying to change it, because then you're tampering with the experiment. You're tampering with the investigation. And if you tamper with it, you're never going to have an accurate depiction of what you're experiencing. It will always be tainted with the limitations of the mind that is trying to change it. So this is why it's so important to go, oh, all this time I've just been trying to change and manipulate and create a new experience, but I've never considered that what if it was possible to just be completely at peace and happy with what I'm actually always experiencing? And what if the only way to access that is to stop trying to change my experience, but just to be actually interested for the first time in my life in what it is that I'm actually experiencing? What are these thoughts, sensations, feelings, perceptions, and visualizations that I see? What is this distance between time and space? Is that really there? Is it not there? Let me see. What experience do I have of time and space? Well, space seems to be the distance between objects. But then, if space is the distance between objects, then space must be relative to an object. What if there was no objects? You see, these are the ways of exploring. This is the kind of, we need to dive into this exploration. So in this moment, just see, recognize completely. For as long as you are seeking to remove your suffering, you will be suffering. The minute that you realize, oh my gosh, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. I can just be interested in the truth and not even have to remove my suffering. You will basically be in as good as the goal. It'll be as good as the goal, because you'll be in the right place for understanding. Your suffering won't be an issue for you, and you'll just be continuing to understand more about yourself. So if this is of interest to you, I have a free community. The link is in the description. I'd love to see you there. I do meditations every single week. There's lots of amazing people there. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Have a beautiful day, guys. Take care. Bye.